Okay, good afternoon.
Hello.
And it's a gorgeous day outside, so I'm glad that you're joining me here today. And we're going to take a little trip down the mighty Mississippi. My name is Evan Weiner. I've been here before, and this is kind of a little different talk for me. It's the Mardi Gras. But I've been to a couple Mardi Gras, and I spoke on cruise ships prior to COVID-19. Haven't gone back since, although they've wanted me to. And I was on the ship March of 2019, a celebrity ship, and I'm giving this talk. And because I've gone to the Mardi Gras, I've had friends in New Orleans who filled me in on the Mardi Gras as well. And I've gone to other places. So we got about 800 people in the theater, the celebrity ship. It's March of 2019. And I'm introduced, I'm giving this talk, and we're going to New Orleans. We're going to New Orleans, and then afterwards we're heading somewhere in the Caribbean. I think it was the Cayman Islands, I'm not sure. I don't remember, they all run into each other. And so I'm introduced, and I said to the crowd, "Did you just hear the captain's announcement?" "What announcement?" "Oh, we're not going to New Orleans, we're docking in Mobile instead." "Huh?" "Oh yeah, we're going to Mobile, Alabama." "What?" I said, "You didn't hear the announcement?" "No." "Oh yeah, we're going to Mobile." And so, with that, I said, hey, we're going to Mobile. And we are. This is Mobile, Alabama. This is this guy here, Jack Langle. You know the movie star named Matthew McConaughey? Heard of him? Well, he played that guy in the movie called We Are All Marshall. Jack was a football coach, and Marshall University, which is in West Virginia, their football team, one of the planes carrying their players crashed, and he was hired to replace the coach, and they did a movie on We Are Marshall with Jack Langle, who was the coach of that team, and he was played by Matthew McConaughey. Well, why Mobile, Alabama? Why not New Orleans? Well, Mobile, Alabama is where Mardi Gras in North America starts, or at least the parades. It's Mobile, not Biloxi, not New Orleans, that had the first North American parade. Carnival is a pre-Lento festival held in Quebec City, which is the largest annual Mardi Gras celebration in North America. After being held intermittently since 1894, the Carnival de Quebec has been celebrated there annually since 1955. I was in Mobile, Alabama in 2003 and also in 2011. My daughter decided to go with us in 2011. That is the museum in Mobile. It's the Mardi Gras Museum. Though Mardi Gras technically refers to only Fat Tuesday, the Mardi Gras season actually begins on Epiphany, a Christian holiday celebrated on January the 6th every year that is otherwise known as the Three Kings Day or the 12th day of Christmas. In Brazil, in many other countries, the period between Epiphany and Fat Tuesday is known as the Carnival. The revelries of the Mardi Gras last until midnight when Ash Wednesday ushers in 40 days of Lent, except in New Orleans because they kind of picked up the sidewalks by 6 o'clock on Fat Tuesday. Carnival is filled with parades, balls, other celebrations leading to Mardi Gras, which is French for Fat Tuesday. Mardi Gras is always the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday. It's my wife, New Orleans, and she's partying. You know she's partying because she has the beads on during Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras was probably based on a spring fertility festival celebrated by the Greeks named Lupercalia more than 3,000 years ago. And this was, hey, go out there, have a party, eat as much as you want, do as much as you want, but wear a mask because people don't want to know who you are that having a good time. Or some experts contend that Mardi Gras type Mardi Gras type festivities popped up solely as a result of the Catholic Church's discouragement of sex and meat during Lent. Church reformers may have helped propagate the pagan rumors, these experts say, in the hope of dissuading pre-Lenten heathenism. Sounds like they're having a party, like the Romans. The Romans had a party at this Colosseum in Rome, where I was about 10 years ago. The Romans took over Lupercalia, and it becomes an orgy. Face masks are necessary. You wanted to hide your misconduct. You weren't proud of your misconduct, so you wore masks. The first Mardi Gras in North America is held downriver from what would be New Orleans. Wasn't there yet. This is the Mississippi, and when you're going up the Mississippi, you see a lot of brown water, and this happened to be a foggy, cloudy day, and this was roughly the area where the first Mardi Gras was held. New Orleans didn't host the first Mardi Gras in North America. It's believed that it started on March the 3rd, 1699, when the French-Canadian explorer, and there was no Canada at that point, France claimed Nova Scotia, New Scotland, New France, in Quebec, but Nova Scotia back in 1604 or so. So there was no Canada until 1867. But the explorer Pierre Lamont d'Iberville camped about 60 miles downriver from the future site of New Orleans. And Louis XIV, there's old Louis up in Quebec City. Me and Louis had a conversation in Quebec City. Anyway, he helped with Mardi Gras in North America because he sent explorers out there who wanted to party. Knowing it was Fat Tuesday back in France, Iberville named the spot Point de Mardi Gras and held a small gala. The Lemoyne brothers, Pierre and Jean-Baptiste, were sent by King Louis XIV to defend France's claim on the territory of La Louisiane, which included what now consists of Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Mobile, Alabama has a significant role in North American history, aside from being the first place the Mardi Gras parades actually took place. It's got a good port, has a really good port, and it becomes the capital of the new colony, the French colony of La Louisiana. Mobile was founded by the 21-year-old Vivant as the capital of colonial Louisiana in 1702 and remained part of New France until 1762. There was a construction of a fort in Mobile, and the settlers and soldiers, party time, they begin the Mardi Gras in 1703. That's the museum. You can buy all kinds of stuff in the Mardi Gras Museum, but you're going to see in a couple of minutes pictures of these elaborate gowns that people wear in Mobile during Mardi Gras. But she's having a good time in there. She picked up the crown, and she picked up some other stuff. French soldiers and settlers feasted and wore costumes. The feasting and revelry on Mardi Gras in Mobile was called boeuf gras, or fatted ox. Masked balls with the Masque de la Mobile began in 1704. And there's the fattened ox. Paper mache, of course. That's in New Orleans in 2019. First known parade in Mobile, 1711. When the Boeuf Gras Society paraded on Mardi Gras with 16 men pushing a cart carrying a large paper mache cow's head. But it's goodbye Alabama for the French. Well, what's now Alabama. During 1720, France is in a war with Spain. Mobile was on the battlefront. So the capital was moved to Biloxi, Mississippi, where there is a port. And the French felt they would be safer with their diplomats in Mobile than they would, rather in Biloxi than they would in Mobile. But the Mardi Gras stayed in Mobile, Alabama, and it has a tradition, the city, of exclusive societies with formal masked balls and elegant costumes. Now members of society, often masked, they were on floats or horseback and tossed gifts to the general public. These costumes are still used at the various balls in Mobile. And you can see they are heavy, they are well designed, and they are dressy. And this is a room in the museum, and for the balls, you could rent these particular costumes if you had enough money to go to the New Year's Eve balls. 1763, things change. The British take over Mobile, and they have restrictions on free blacks, and there's racial segregation. And that caused many Creoles who were leaving Mobile, who were living in Mobile, to move west to New Orleans. 1780, Spain took control of the Mobile area in the aftermath of the American Revolution. The Carnival celebration incorporated Spanish custom of torch-lit parades on 12th night on January 6th. So already you can see the Mardi Gras is borrowing from other cultures. All would blend into the Mardi Gras. In 1813, Mobile became a United States city. It was part of the Mississippi Territory. Mississippi Territory is carved in half in 1817. After Mississippi becomes a state, becomes the Alabama Territory. In the Anglican and Episcopalian traditions, the day before Ash Wednesday was celebrated as Shrove Tuesday, marked by consumption of rich foods before the fasting practices of Lent. The Mobile Mardi Gras season actually starts in November. So you're talking about November, December, January. This year, 3/4 of February. Some years, all of February into March, which means it's about a 3.5 month to 4 month celebration. And there are exclusive parties held by some secret mystic societies. And then, well, where are you going to dress up? You dress up on New Year's Eve, right? New Year's Eve balls. It has become closely entwined with the social debutante season for certain families. Other mystic societies begin their events at 12th night, or January 6th, with parades, balls, some of them masquerade balls, and king cake parties. And if you watch the floats go by, Matthew McConaughey here, over there, decided he's had enough, so good old Jack has decided to go in the background there. Anyway, you're on the float, you throw presents, and you toss the presents, and that's considered to be a good thing. Throws include necklaces of plastic beads, doublon coins, decorated plastic cups, candy-wrapped cakes known as moon pies, or snacks, stuffed animals, small toys, footballs, frisbees, or whistles. And they all come from the float, and you wave goodbye, or you wave hello while you're in the float, and this again is in the museum in Mobile, Alabama. 39 parading societies hold parades. Most of the parades are precursors to the pomp and pageantry of the mystic societies, ultra-formal white-tie balls, New Year's Eve, which can have Broadway caliber sets and performances by their own kings and queens in royal courts, and up to 6,000 people watch this going on. One of the paintings of a flag, actually that is a float in the museum in Mobile. Well, how did the #1 crew, as they call it, or society in New Orleans form? Well, it didn't form in Mobile. It formed in Mobile, not New Orleans. In 1830, a group of revelers led by Michael Kraft, who probably was drunk, was influenced by his Pennsylvania Swedish traditions of celebrating the New Year. He stayed awake all New Year's Eve, started the dawn parade on January 1st, making noise with cowbells, hoes, and rakes. Well, this would eventually walk to New Orleans, eventually. And I got to the point, at this point, where I told the people on the cruise, oh, just kidding, you are going to New Orleans. By the way, what are you going to do in New Orleans? Anybody going to flash? Now you got to understand, this crowd, the majority of this crowd was over the age of 70. And I said, anybody gonna flash? This woman is sitting up there on the upper deck. I'm just pointing her because that's where she was. A woman in her 70s said, I'm gonna flash. You want beads that bad? I'm gonna flash. And then another guy said, forget about flashing, we're going to strip joints. I said, you going to strip joint? He says, I'm going to a strip joint. Then I said to the men, just the men, how many of you plan to go to strip joints with their wives or girlfriends or significant others sitting next to them? And you got about 30 hands got up. They were going to Mardi Gras to go to the strip joints. So we're walking to New Orleans. As you can see, my daughter partook in all of the beads that were flung her way. I decided at that point, you know, I've been here, done that, and it broke my camera once. I had a digital camera, and we got beads flung at me, and it hit me in the hand, and the camera went flying, and it broke my camera. Never again. Never again. That was in 2007 that happened to me. Walking to New Orleans. Well, the group became the first parading mystic society, and they called themselves the Cowbellian de Rankin Society. Well, it was a parody of French. It was still cowbells, and it was still rakes. They had annual parades each New Year's Eve. In 1813, the members of the Cowbellian de Rankin, with the cowbells and the hoes and the rakes society, took their parade tradition to New Orleans, eventually forming the Mystic Crew of Commerce. That was the first crew ever in New Orleans. Asked what his group represented, Kraft, who probably was drunk, thought it over and said, hey, we're the Cowbellian and Rankin Society. Some of these men would move to New Orleans and started a parade in 1857 called Commerce. Back in Mobile, some more costumes that are used during the Mardi Gras. In 1843, some men who were refused membership by the Cowbellians formed the Strikers Independent Society with their own New Year's parade. The Gras Society held their last procession on Shrove Tuesday in 1861, before the start of the American Civil War, and then dissolved. Does this guy look like he's having a good time? If you can see his face, does he look like he's having a good time? No. Joe Kane. 1867, Civil War is over. And Joe Kane revived the parade tradition in Mobile, Alabama on Mardi Gras, riding in the decorated charcoal wagon along with 6 fellow veterans. The event has been celebrated annually with Joe Kane Day since 1966. And my daughter couldn't try on a costume, but she get a picture with the costume, and there she is with the costume. Early Mardi Gras celebrations were grounded in religion. Now we've got Spanish influence, we've got Swedish influence, we got the church influence, we got an orgy influence back in the old days of the Romans. But this one, they were held by the region's French Catholic founders and inhabitants. In recent years, though, the revelries, celebrations, and parades more resemble the parties of New Orleans, where, well, it's debauchery. That's what it is. You could drink your beer in public, and you could, that's what it is, anyway. Meanwhile, this is Biloxi, Mississippi, and this is the memorial to the victims of Hurricane Camille in 1969. And I bring that up because Biloxi lost being the capital of the Louisiana Territory in 1722. The capital, they left there, the French, because of the tides that come in and the hurricanes. And they went to a new town, relatively new town, inland harbor by the name of New Orleans, because they thought New Orleans was a lot safer from hurricanes. By the way, this is the second New Orleans. The first New Orleans picked up and moved because of flooding from hurricanes. Biloxi and the Mardi Gras. Biloxi became the first city to celebrate the Mardi Gras in Mississippi. Pop-up celebrations dotted the coastline during the 1830s and 1840s, and the Mardi Gras grew from there to Gulfport, to Bay St. Louis, to the Louisiana line. Biloxi's first official Mardi Gras parade started in 1908. thrown by the Gulf Coast Carnival Association. The inaugural parade had 17 floats, 50 flambeau carriers, 12-man Herald newspaper band, the mayor and the city council, and the grand marshal. The parade also introduced the king to Iberville and queen, and that's Biloxi spelled backwards, Ioxlip, hallmarks of the event today. That's Biloxi. It's actually called Biloxi. When you're in Mississippi, it is known as Biloxi, not Biloxi. Just we in the north call it Biloxi, but it's not. The first known coast parade didn't roll until 1891. 7 floats appeared on the streets of Biloxi. Parading really took off after that. The Biloxi Carnival and Literary Association staged its first parade in 1908. That's the Gulf Coast. And it could be a nasty place as well. Being that this is also Black History Month, I want to point out one thing about Biloxi. I went with my friend Dean Shapiro. You'll see a picture of Dean a little later on. In 2003, I was down in Mobile on business, and Dean drove me down to the beach at Biloxi. And on the beach, there's a sign. This beach was desegregated in 1968, 4 years after the Civil Rights Act was passed, signed into law by Lyndon Johnson, July 7th, 1964. It took another 4 years before a Negro was legally allowed to use the beach and swim in the Gulf of Mexico in Biloxi. 8 years after the parade's debut marked the Biloxi Carnival and Literary Association's incorporation. Greek culture and mythology stood at the root of the organization's mission. So we finally get to New Orleans, and I'm relaxing in New Orleans, and I'm watching a parade. The parade was called Barkus. It was a parade made up of solely dogs. And I have a little memento from 2007 on my keychain, which I will show you here in a second, as soon as I get it out. And it's an acrylic dog bone. And it says, it's an acrylic dog bone. It says Barkus 2007, because I was watching the parade and they gave out keychains. Unfortunately, this one is broken, but it's the only one I have. But they gave out keychains as I watched the parade of dogs, all dressed up, with the winner of the parade looking like Stella from Streetcar Named Desire.
From that movie.
Yeah, from the movie. New Orleans contributed the colors purple, gold, and green to the parade, and also Mardi Gras music, but it didn't come from New Orleans, those colors. It came from the most unlikely of sources. Another float in New Orleans at Canal Street in New Orleans. Mardi Gras really got going in New Orleans soon after the city's founding in 1718. But the Spanish who ruled the territory from 1762 to 1800 cracked down on certain Mardi Gras rituals. When the U.S. finally takes over with the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, there was banning of both masked balls and public disguises. That is where the transfer took place, in Jackson Square in New Orleans. You've been there. You've been there. I've been there 4 or 5 times. Anyway, so this is where, and they also traded slaves over here as well. But this is where the United States officially took over from the French in 1803 with the Louisiana Purchase. Jackson Square is a historic park in the French Quarter of New Orleans, Louisiana, declared a National Historic Landmark in 1960 for its central role in the city's history and the site where in 1803 Louisiana was made United States territory pursuant to the Louisiana Purchase. The first recorded Mardi Gras street parade took place in 1837 by the Cowbellians. At that time, the city was transporting from a small backwater into a major metropolis. Wow, major for the time. You just beers to go.
There you are.
There I am, yeah, one of the Mardi Gras, and I even have beads on. In fact, I took those beads the other day to the Eastchester Library and gave them out. I didn't bring any beads today, I should have. So I got bags and bags of beads in my house, and we gotta get rid of them one day. So maybe next time I'll bring some beads over. In 1857, the 6 men from the Cowbellians organized a secret society, the Mystic Crew of Commerce. They held a parade with the theme of demon actors in Milton's Paradise Lost, along with a lavish grand ball. And with that, the newly formed Comus reversed declining popularity of Mardi Gras in New Orleans, and also established New Orleans as the epicenter of Mardi Gras in the United States. And that was just a parade that just broke out. Parades that break out. There are the big parades and there are the smaller parades, but they give parades during funerals. A parade will break out to honor somebody in New Orleans during a funeral. In 1872, the crew of Rex and the Knights of Momus began paying for parades and balls of their own. They were soon followed a decade later by the crew of Proteus. Since the early societies were exclusively male and white, and women in the 19th century, the 1800s, had, well, if you were a male in an insane asylum, you had more rights, more human rights than the average woman in the United States. And so women and blacks would form their own groups. That would be 1872. In 1992, the New Orleans City Council passed an ordinance that prohibited crews from discriminating on the basis of race, religion, sexual orientation, or national origin. This is just 31 years ago. Think of this, just 31 years ago. Rex pledged to immediately integrate. It took them until 1993 to integrate. But Comus, the founder of the parades in New Orleans, and Momus and Proteus stopped parading because they did not want to open their ranks to black people. Comus has not yet returned to the streets. Momus spun off into the Kings of Chaos, and Proteus came back in 2000, 23 years ago, after signing the non-discrimination pledge. Jim Crow still exists in the New Orleans parades. The founder of the parades has not come back because they did not want to desegregate. Many New Orleans families have belonged for generations to crews, groups that create elaborate costumes, floats, and many Mardi Gras parades in the 2 weeks leading up to Fat Tuesday. Some of the characters of New Orleans that I knew. That's me in the hat, and that is Chris Owens. Chris Owens was a New Orleans legend. And she just passed away a few months ago. She was either 98, 104, or 93 years old, depending on who you believe. My wife said, what does she look like up close? I said, you know how Cher looks? When Cher grows up, she's going to look like Chris Owens. She's in white lingerie. She's either 78 or 84 there, or maybe 73. She's in white lingerie, and for about an hour and a half each night she would sing and dance in white lingerie with a bunch of guys as their background dancers. And she's got me up there and she's dancing with me. And I have 2 left feet, so I can't dance. And so anyway, I'm pushed up there. She was, till her death, one of the major figures in Mardi Gras entertainment in New Orleans. And her bar was right in the middle of Bourbon Street. Oh, and by the way, when she was up there dancing with me, her boyfriend at the time was 42.
What's who?
42 years old. And he married her. He's a widower now. He's a widower. But anyway, there she is, Chris Owens, and she was one of the major entertainers. And remember the trumpet player Albert? He was a regular at her bar, Albert. Not only do crews participate in parades and as leaders of New Orleans society, they also hold balls and other elaborate events during the carnival season, which starts the day after Christmas and ends with the Mardi Gras. One of those dogs actually won Barkus, I think the one in the shopping cart. That is the parade of the dogs. Stella! Stella! So anyway, and people just, it's great. You just watch the parade and they're having a good old time. The dogs are having a good old time. It's not just Fat Tuesday that is celebrated. No, there are parades like Barkus. This woman here, I could do a whole talk on her. This woman here, her name is Verita Thompson, and she was Humphrey Bogart's mistress.
Really?
So yeah, really. You know, there's that great story about the great romance of Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall, right?
Yeah.
Except she's the mistress. And she was the mistress for about 20 years. And she was the queen of Bourbon Street. She had a bar on Bourbon Street, right off of Bourbon Street, named Bogey's. And and that was her boyfriend at the time, Dean Shapiro, my good friend. Dean was 53 and she was 85. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Verita, who could drink Humphrey Bogart under a table. She was runner-up Miss Arizona around 1936, 1937. She tried her hand in Hollywood. She was going out there and she was going to be an actress. And when she was very young, she was beautiful. And but the Hollywood, back in those days, if you were flat-chested, the movie studios generally had no use for you.
She reminds me of Marilyn Monroe.
She was friends with Marilyn Monroe. She
What?
was friendly with Marilyn Monroe. No, my wife? You mean my wife, not Verita. Verita was 5'0" and weighed about 89 pounds. Anyway, so Verita gets onto the movie sets and they give her a role. She's going to be a stunt woman. So then Verita, I said, what do you do as a stunt woman? She said, you get thrown out of burning buildings. Horses run over you. So she quit. She quit. But she didn't want to leave showbiz. She decided that she had a friend from Nogales, New Mexico. She was born in Nogales, Arizona. And there was no fence between them back in those days. So she had a friend who made wigs. And she decided that she is going to become a hairdresser. And she was going to weave wigs onto people like Humphrey Bogart and others. And so she and Humphrey used to strike up conversations. And they started to date before he met Lauren Bacall. And they became lovers. He called her Pete, because her name at the time was Verita Peterson. And anyway, they carried on for about 20 years, and she was helping him while he had the cancer. He was sick of cancer. So she opened the bar, and she ended up selling the bar to somebody who you might have heard of, Jennifer Flowers, who allegedly was Bill Clinton's mistress.
Yeah.
So, so she introduced me to Chris Owens. She pushed me on stage, and then we ended up at Jennifer Flowers' bar. And you can't see this, but my wife is quite busty and was wearing a low-top sweater. And Jennifer Flowers, who isn't, looks at my wife. She says, "I sure like your top, honey." So I'm sitting there in my first Mardi Gras. My first Mardi Gras, I'm with Jennifer Flowers. And the other time I'm on stage with Chris Owens. And by the way, Chris Owens used to do the can-can in Cuba for Batista. That Batista was kicked out by Castro on January 1st, 1959. So, you know, I have met some of the real characters of the Mardi Gras. Anyway, cancellations. Since Comas ushered in the modern era of Mardi Gras in 1857, the New Orleans festivities have been canceled about a dozen times. Most of the cancellations came during the Civil War, World War I, World War II, though revelers in the 1870s had a problem. There was no real reason they needed to go there because New Orleans had an outbreak of yellow fever, and yellow fever could kill you. Scaled down version of Mardi Gras took place in 2006, months after Hurricane Katrina flooded the Gulf Coast, killed over 1,800 people.
Wow.
Celebrations in New Orleans in 2020 and 2021 canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But it's a party, and it's okay to drink on the street, and beer is a buck. There are more than 70 secret societies or crews involved in today's Mardi Gras festivities. Each crew builds a float to represent their specific theme on parade days, and many include a celebrity guest, usually local celebrities, in their celebrations to regale to their audience. Streetcar named Desire. That is the streetcar named Desire, at least it says so, and it also says Mask Up for the Mardi Gras. Again, that's down on Canal Street.
You know what the streetcar cost? 5 cents.
Yes, I know. It's illegal to wear masks in New Orleans except on Mardi Gras. New Orleans city ordinance prohibits the wearing of masks on any other day, and Mardi Gras masks must be removed by 6 o'clock on that day. Basically, they roll up the sidewalks. 6 o'clock comes around, and that's it. You know, but you've had all your days of debauchery before that. Now, I am not in that crowd. I know better. I do not want to get hit with beads flying at you. But I have the picture, and I had my camera, and I stood about 500 feet away and just zoomed in on them. The throws. Floats notoriously give out throws, which are exactly what they sound like, objects thrown into the crowd. They range from coconuts. They used to use real coconuts that they threw at you, given by the crew of Zulu, to stuffed animals, or gold doublons by the crew of Rex. Beads are the most ubiquitous throws and are given to almost everybody. But if you want beads, you better know the local language, like, throw me something, mister. It's considered a great honor to receive a throw. One of those dogs actually won Barkus. One of those dogs, and there are the colors, and you can see on this guy's musical instrument, Barkus. He was one of the musicians during the Barkus parade. King cake, available only during the Mardi Gras season. King cake is typically made with a broche dough, braided and laced with cinnamon. The dough is then glazed with purple, green, and gold sugar and covered in icing in those same Mardi Gras colors. By the way, like I said, those colors did not come from New Orleans. What really sets king cake apart from other desserts, however, is a small plastic baby hidden inside. Whoever finds the baby in his or her slice must buy the next cake, or perhaps hold the next party. And if you do flash, there are guys there who will throw you beads from the second floor. So occasionally you'll see a girl flash, and all the beads will come cascading from there. The French Quarter Historic District is the oldest section of the city of New Orleans, founded in 1718 by Lemoyne. New Orleans developed around the city square, which is about 6 inches above sea level. Inches matter in New Orleans. They did not get flooded out during Katrina. They were above sea level. About a quarter of a mile away, they got flooded out because they're 6 feet under sea level of the Mississippi River. And parades are over. Time to go home. That's Bourbon Street after the parades are done, like at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Named for a royal family and friends, Bourbon Street embodies the life of a party town. The street is lit by neon lights, throbbing with music, decorated by beads and balconies. And every night you could have caught this, Verita. They're dancing and having a crowd following her. And to her right, which you don't see, are statues to Chris Owens and Al Hurt, Pete Fountain on Bourbon Street. And there was always a band around, and people came to see Verita, who is decked out in her Coco Chanel original. Coco Chanel used to give her all of her clothes, and she had size 4.5 feet. There was an Italian shoemaker who used to send his samples to her. She had size 4.5 feet. She was the life of the party. Rex, King of the Carnival. Among the most famous crews is the crew of Rex, founded in 1872. Remember I told you about those colors? 1872, the Grand Duke, Alexis Romanov Alexandrovich, brother of the heir apparent, Nicholas II, to the Russian throne accepted an invitation to attend Mardi Gras festivities in New Orleans. Prominent city businessmen organized the visit as a way to attract tourism and business to the city after the Civil War. And there is, at least that was the 2019 Rex, King of the Carnival. Forming a new crew of prominent citizens, they designated the crew's leader for the year as Rex, Latin for king. Officially called the School of Design, the crew is more commonly known as the crew of Rex. Every year, a prominent person has been chosen to be Rex. That year's King of the Carnival, the Grand Duke from Russia, was the first one. He was given the symbolic key for the city. But there is one tradition that continues that started back with the Russian Duke. Bead throwing. There's my wife with a bunch of beads. And I made sure my camera was kind of working after that, because that's after I got hit with the beads.
I
and
bought
the
a lot of those beads.
The beads? Yeah, we got an attic full of them. The true meaning, though, and I'm talking about the beads here, of Mardi Gras beads begins with the traditional colors. But they're not from Louisiana. They're from Russia. The Grand Duke Alexis. During that visit in 1872, the newly founded crew of Rex chose the color of the Duke's royal house for the beads that the crew members would throw from their parade float into the crowd of revelers. Later, they assigned a meaning to each color, maybe trying to get away from the Russian influence. Purple stood for justice, green for faith, gold for power. The idea was to toss the beads to the crowd into the crowd who exhibited these traits. People who caught them were said to have good luck for the coming year. Oh, the original beads were glass. Good luck trying to catch them. Nowadays, they're just plastic, and they're one of the most popular Mardi Gras traditions. Zulu coconuts. They're now throwing plastic coconuts. Originally, they didn't. How would you like to be on the receiving end of a coconut? One of the oldest traditionally African crews. Remember, there are influences from everywhere. Zulu held its first parade in 1909. The very next year, as the historic record showed, they began tossing coconuts to members of the crowd. Originally, the coconuts were left in their natural brown, hairy state, but there was a tradition of painting them and decorating them with glitter, and then they throw it at you. Nowadays, Zulu coconuts are handed into the crowd rather than to be thrown to avoid injuries and lawsuits. Flambeau. The blazing torches, Spanish influence. Lighting the way for parade goers during the nighttime Mardi Gras festivities are called flambeaux, French for torch. And they date back to a custom established by the original Mardi Gras crew, Comas. In the mid-19th century, the torches were needed. There were no street lights. The original flambeau carriers were slaves and free men of color. Their torches probably made with shredded rope soaked in pitch and set ablaze. Mardi Gras flambeau has evolved into a performance art as robe-wearing carriers twirl and dance with their torches, now much lighter and fueled by butane and kerosene. So what happens after the Mardi Gras is gone? You have to clean up. You have to clean up the beads. You have to clean up cigarette butts. You have to clean up old plastic cups filled with beer, water, whatever. There's a huge cleanup. Where does the carnival take place elsewhere? Rio de Janeiro, Cadiz, Spain, Venice, Italy, Dusseldorf, Germany, Crete, Bolivia, Quebec City, Cayman Islands, Cadiz, where they have a parade. I was in Cadiz because I'm on cruise ships. Compared with the spectacular nature of other carnivals, there's lighthearted fun and entertainment provided by the Carnival of Cadiz. The Carnival in Rio is a festival held every year before Lent. It's considered the biggest carnival in the world. 2 million people per day on the streets. The first carnival festival in Rio occurred in 1723. It's my buddy Rusty Blake and me in Quebec City in October on a rainy day in Quebec City. Carnaval de Quebec, Winter Carnival, or the Carnival. It's been held in Quebec City from 1894 on and off, and then continually for the last 68 years. Mahon Carnivals, the mascot of the festival, and in 55 he makes his first appearance. Up to 1 million people attend the Carnival of Quebec. I almost went there during college, except I got mononucleosis. I was recovering from mononucleosis, 21 years old, not even 21 yet. And I figured, you know, I have mono, probably isn't the best of ideas to go to a place where it's 6 degrees and snow up to here. So instead I convalesced in a bed. It's the largest winter festival in the world at one point, but it is the largest winter festival in the Northern Hemisphere. 1914 in Crete, the carnival was organized, featured a ball, parade, games, jokes, treasure hunt, which is still one of the favorite events of the celebration. Bolivia, the indigenous Euro people have observed this festival since pre-Columbian times, before the Spanish Empire outlawed the customs of Upper Peru, in 17th century. Rather than disappear, the festival adapted, incorporating Christian iconography and religious dimensions, and there's a symmetry between the two cultures. Venice. Hey, what's the news on the Rialto in Venice? Spent my wedding anniversary there one year. Carnival returned to Venice in 1979. The Italian government decided to bring back the history and culture of Venice, sought to use traditional carnival as the centerpiece of the effort. One of the most important events is a contest for the most beautiful mask, which is judged by a panel of international costume and fashion designers. In Seattle, they tried to bring the Mardi Gras. It was too rowdy, so Seattle said, we're not doing it. Cayman Islands. We missed it by a day when we were there. The Cayman Islands celebrations start the last Saturday before Ash Wednesday. Popular things to do at the festival, including a float parade. Dusseldorf, Germany, there's a carnival. On the banks of the Rhine River, locals and visitors alike dance, sing, and celebrate the countless carnival events that take place. Fairhope. You would think this place, Fairhope, Alabama, came straight out of Woodstock. Artist colony in Alabama, of all places. Fairhope Museum of History, I went to a party there one night. Other spots in the Gulf Coast, Daphne Island, Fairhope. St. Andrews, Mardi Gras, Panama City Beach, Mardi Gras, and Music Festival in Florida. And even in Tampa, at Busch Gardens in Tampa, there's Mardi Gras celebration. Southwest Louisiana, Mardi Gras, Lake Charles, Louisiana. It extends all the way down to Galveston, Texas. Mardi Gras, Galveston, Beaumont, Mardi Gras. There are songs about the Mardi Gras. That's Fats Domino's house. And if you missed the FD for Fats Domino or the neon sign that says Fats Domino, you can't miss the dominoes on the side of the house where you see dominoes on each side. Some of the songs include Carnival Time, Al Johnson recorded on the Rick label. Carnival Time hit the streets of New Orleans for Mardi Gras. 1960, didn't catch on at first, but now it's a standard. Go to the Mardi Gras. Professor Long here, Go to the Mardi Gras. First recorded in 1949 by Roy Baldhead Bird, also known as Professor Long here, Fats Domino. Recorded in 1956. Paul Simon had a song in 1973, Take Me to the Mardi Gras. Also, Paul McCartney recorded a song in the 1970s about the Mardi Gras. The Mardi Gras starting point, this is the plaque where the first Mardi Gras took place, which started up Julia Street in St. Charles. The economic impact of the Mardi Gras in New Orleans, allegedly, $1 billion is spent during the time. It brings in tourists, spends $70 million on hotels, $61 million food and transportation, which stays in New Orleans. The motel money does not necessarily stay, as most of it goes back to the quote-unquote name hotels. front office is elsewhere. Mardi Gras in Mobile brings in an alleged $250,000 according to $250 million according to the Mobile Bay Convention and Visitors Bureau. Yeah, how many of you are you having a Super Bowl parade here on Friday? Super Bowl party on Friday here, a Sunday? Are you having a Super Bowl party here? Because I see they've set up for Super Bowl. Well, there is an event in Louisiana bigger than the Super Bowl, much bigger than the Super Bowl. It's called Mardi Gras. National Football League bumped New Orleans as the host of Super Bowl 58 in 2024. They gave New Orleans the event in 2025. When the league decided to add the 17th game to its regular season, it pushed Super Bowl 58 out of the week. It brought it into conflict with the Mardi Gras celebration in New Orleans. Even the NFL, with the biggest sports event in North America, knew better. You don't mess with the Mardi Gras. The game will be played in Las Vegas. Well, it's time to go home.
Yeah.
Well, for me it is. For you, almost dinner time. And I think the sheriff was about ready to take my wife away. Too much partying that day. So it is time to go home. It is time to say goodbye. And that's the last time I saw Verita Thompson in 2011. And there she is, complete with the Coco Chanel outfit. And actually, it was 2008. She died in 2010. And she told me, she says, you know, first of all, one day we're in Santa Monica, California, where she also lived. And she told me, and she couldn't remember her 5 husbands' names. But anyway,
Excuse me.
Humphrey Bogart's mistress.
Humphrey Bogart
Mistress.
had a mistress
Yeah, Verita. She was my friend.
before his marriage.
During his marriage to Laura Bacall.
During
What's her
the-
name again?
Verita Thompson. Now, the Bacall estate, the Bacall estate will say, well, she was only a hairdresser.
I know.
But there's more to it than that. Anyway, Verita told me, I'm going to live to 110, and then I'm going straight to hell. And I'll tell everybody who I hadn't seen in a long time what fun they were missing. Thank you so much. Any questions or comments? Let me know. What'd you think about the Mardi Gras? And Verita, my friend Verita.